What's the response to that?
All right. And welcome to this episode of Better Call Saul, where we are going to talk today about are real estate agents employees or are they independent contractors? And here with Rachael Real and I today is Saul Klein. Hi, Saul.
Hey, how's it going, Jennifer and Rachel? Good to see you guys. I haven't seen you.
Good afternoon. Right. Good afternoon.
Well, Saul, I think this is like a big issue right now, especially with the Department of Justice saying, and we're trying to decide, are we employees or are we contractors? Can you give us some context?
Yeah, so this is an old idea, and people have talked about this for a long time. So first of all, no judgment from my part. I'm not going to tell you which one I think is best, right?
I will. I'll tell you which one I think is best.
Model. Yeah, well, you can do that. Then I can fight with you, right? So
there you go.
There are two employment models in the real estate industry. Independent contractor, actually everywhere, independent contractor, employee. Now, there are a number of differences in those two. But the way the real estate industry has decided to work years ago was that when a broker hires an agent, the broker hires that agent as an independent contractor. And what that means is the broker has to be careful about what they say. They have to be careful about parameters around the employment. They have to be careful about requiring that agents go to meetings. They have to be careful about telling people they got to get education, because you can't. Because if in fact the IRS came in and said, you're doing all the things that an employer would do for an employee, then they could reclassify. And if they reclassify, then you got all that withholding, right? Because as an independent contractor, the FICA, that asset self-employment tax is like about 13%, whereas the Social Security, if you're an employee, is about 14 or 15%. But the thing is, when you're an employer, you pay both sides. When you're an independent contractor, you pay one side and the employer pays another side. So that's the independent contractor. Now, in California, you're considered an employee. Even though you got a contract that says you're an independent contractor, from the perspective of the licensing in the state, you're an employer, you're an employed. And now that makes sense to me because the broker is responsible for the acts of the agent. And so if your agents are independent contractors, you can't tell them what to do.
Right.
Can you be responsible for them? And so that's a
big mess.
It is. I mean, so if I can see that it makes sense, like when it's set up like that way, it's very confusing because yes, the brokers are responsible for us. The E&O insurance generally like flows through them, things like that, but they don't require like, you have to come to this meeting, all this stuff. But what if you can still have like a contractor agreement or like a vendor agreement with somebody that says, hey, this is what the scope of the work, which includes meetings, different types of things. And that would still be an independent contractor, right?
Well, it kind of depends, right, on exactly what that says and how they signed it and do they have copy, a lot of different things, right? But I would say, just kind of looking at it, that's trying to circumvent the whole idea of what an independent contractor is.
Right.
Not really
it's putting it in a different piece of paper with a different title on it.
Yeah.
It's true because really, but what would solve all of this if we didn't have brokerages in the first place?
Precisely.
Well, so then what do you get? Then you have to change all the law.
Great.
Right. And then you'd also have to increase the educational requirements more than likely.
Yes.
I have no argument with that.
All right. Because typically,
I'm just going to say it.
Yeah. Well, a salesperson is typically an apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For a broker,
Great.
Right. And so that's the way it works. And so you go to work.
Yeah. And then they come out and when they're done, they have this apprenticeship program or whatever you want to call it. And then it's over a certain period of time and there's different educational classes on business and different things. But when they come out, they are their own business. I mean, I feel like that's how it's set up. The fact that we have to have brokerage oversight denotes to me a bigger problem. Like, why do we have to have
Well,
that?
Again.
look at it from my perspective. So I've been in brokerages and I've also been completely independent, which is what I am now. There is no difference from my client standpoint, but no difference for me either. I just give myself a 1099 at the end of the year versus a brokerage handing it to me.
Right.
I mean, the only thing that I have to get on my own is E&O insurance, which is a once a year, send them a payment of a couple $100 and I'm done. Otherwise, I still function the same way as an independent broker, whether I'm under a brokerage umbrella or my own umbrella.
Until you do something wrong. And when you do something
Correct.
wrong, if you're working for a broker, then you're going to get probably in trouble, but so will your broker.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
You're going to sue the broker and you're going to sue the agent.
Yeah, but if there were no, if we were like, it's very gray right now. It's like we are independent contractors on paper.
It really is. It's kind of funky because
Well, here's
a lot
another
of
thing.
agents act like employees. And a lot of them act like independent contractors. Do you agree?
Yeah, in a way they do, but as long as they're not being told that right?
Yeah.
That this is the
Right.
way you do it. Now, here's another thing. We all complain and have for years about the lack of knowledge, education of people who practice real estate, that the barrier to entry is so low that we get people in the industry who, because they can't do anything else, they decide they're going to get into real estate.
Right.
So if in fact, though, and then brokers who hire people as independent contractors, they can't tell them to go to school.
Right.
right.
So the
This
states
would
have
solve
implemented
some of that problem as well.
that would solve. Yes, exactly. Because then the broker
solve
could
some
set
of that.
standards and could require that agents go to school, and you can't do that in independent contract.
Except
You
the
can
problem
suggest-
is that brokerages are incentivized by kind of like, they're not incentivized to like cap agents. Like a number of brokerages will start with cap agents. They're incentivized by getting more people who do enough not
Who
to
don't cap.
cap
They
the
want
commission.
people that don't cap.
Exactly. Right. And so like that in and of
Right.
itself is also like a problem. I guess I would want to know, are the statistics of the people that are getting in trouble, are they more often agents that are like doing a low level, a low number of units, or like a high number of units? You know what I mean? Do you know?
In my experience being on professional standards for the last handful of years, it's been about 6 or 7 years now, and I'm in, sit through several dozen, probably 100 hearings at this point. It can be somebody who's new, it can be somebody who's been seasoned and been in the business for a very long time. I think more often than not, it's people that have been around a little longer and who do a decent amount of business, because there's more opportunity for them to screw up. So, it's a loaded question, because when you have these people that are seasoned veterans and you're telling them that, no, this is not how this is done, and this is not how you handle yourself ethically in a transaction, they just really don't care. Often they really don't care.
Yeah.
They're like, I'll just pay the fine and move on. And, I don't care that we've had this conversation. They're just going to continue to conduct the business the way they feel.
I guess we have
appropriate for
to
them.
So
agree,
this thing
like,
we've identified.
right. Sorry, Saul.
I was going to say, now we're talking about these two things: employee, independent contractor. And one thing that could help clean up the industry is to make everybody an employee. Because when somebody is an employee, then that employer has certain expenses that they don't have with an independent contractor. And certain things they got to do, like time off and all these different, it's different.
Right.
And so if there was a cost to a broker to hire people, like make them employees,
Right. It would be a big hurdle for people.
but then brokers wouldn't just hire anybody off the street,
Right.
because it would cost them money to hire people. So now you get people concerned about the expense. And so that model would work, and that would clean up the industry.
Right.
And they'll go to the other side, independent contractor. Because I love the idea of being an independent contractor. But I became a broker. Now I worked for 3 brokers like in my first 2 years in business, because I was a naval officer, right? I was trying to figure this whole thing out. Then they told me I had to join the board of realtors. I went crazy. I said, what? You can't force me to do something like that. Right. I mean, I was obstinate, right? Because I didn't know. And then when I found out that, hey, being an independent, I'm going to find a broker, lets me do whatever I want. And so I found an old mentor old, he was like in his 80s. And I found this guy and I worked. And then I learned from him about buying gold, buying silver, buying real estate, brokering. He would buy fruit in a packing house. And then right? I mean, this guy was a broker, a real broker, real estate broker. He brokered everything. Right? Yeah, he's just in the middle guy. And so I learned a lot from him, but I had this idea that I was working on my own. And so part of that for me was because I loved real estate itself, because it just had so much value to me that for me, real estate wasn't about selling real estate to other people. It was about buying real estate and owning real estate, investing in real estate, building my wealth with the real estate. And the fact that I hired agents, and that was part of it, right? Because I grew from 1 person to 2 to 15 to, right? And so we had an office, we had agents, but still, I like this idea of independent contractors and being able to go out. And I always encourage people, go out and buy property. And well, what about the commission? You get this, right? Can we roll my commission back into the sale? Mm-hmm. And, you get, and it depends on who the people are and how much you like them and whether you do. But again, I always wanted to encourage people to buy real estate because I think it's the best thing for people to do. And if you're an independent contractor, you're kind of working in that mode. A lot of people that work in that mode, they're kind of more interested in the real estate and the value of the real estate as opposed to leads and lead tracking and selling X number of people a year to make your nut, right? To make all that. Yeah, that's all important. But to me, that takes up a lot of your time, particularly today with gazillions of leads that are worthless.
Right.
Right. So I want to go out and find the real estate. If I don't have the money to buy it, I'd call my friends, my family. I'd raise enough money to buy the property. We'd buy the property, we'd hold it. If I found another property I didn't have enough money for, I'd find some friends and relatives. And that's what we did. And that would be kind of more difficult to do if you worked for a broker, if you were an employee of a broker, because they might have some restrictions on what you can buy, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I can't see a world where you have, because you're right, Saul, like if we eliminate brokerages overall, we're going to have to change the education requirements. And the chances of that happening are low, right? So like I can see, until I become the czarina, then it's high. But until then,
it's gonna happen.
Yeah, it will happen. I can see a world where we have big companies that employ real estate agents for like, I mean, the average salary is what, like $45,000 or something like that. Huh?
Redfin.
Right.
There's a couple others, but Redfin's the biggest.
Redfin's the biggest one that operates on
so I can
see basis.
Yeah, I can see where we have a few of those, right? And that's where they like get their training. And then once you hit a certain level, and most agents, I think, will just stay there because if they're making 50, 60,000, like they're happy and that's fine. And then you have the other people that are more like entrepreneur, where their goals, they want to do more, and they're going to be more like Rachael.
That's a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Well, and they can use that as a stepping stone. If they want to take it further, so be it.
Yeah.
But at least they're learning with some accountability involved.
Maybe.
I mean, look at it from the right. Look at it from the managing broker standpoint. The way we are now, managing brokers are responsible for the actions of their agents, but have no ability to require anything of them. So what kind of position does that put a managing broker in? I would argue that's the crappiest position to be in.
It's the worst. But I would want to see like
a position to be in.
But I would want to see, because I think like I'm sure there's others besides Redfin. I would want to see, do those, because it's been going on for a couple of years, right? I would want to know the details of and get the facts around, okay, well, one, what is the problem we're trying to solve? If we're trying to say like they were less likely to violate code of ethics, less likely to do all these things, is that actually true? Are we not seeing that they're going to meet, they're not getting called in for meetings, they're not getting complaints, or is it just complaints in a different way?
Right, different types of complaints just based on the nature of the business
employer
model.
Right.
Employer. Right. So I think it can be much more efficient and better for consumers and better for agents as well to be employed.
Why?
But first of all, look at the benefits of employment as opposed to the benefits of independent contract. Look at the cost of being an employee and the cost of being an independent contractor, particularly in your first couple of years in the business, right? So if I work for a company that pays me a salary, as long as I'm doing the things I'm supposed to do, I'll get paid that salary. And then I'll learn more about the business. And maybe so you're right. Maybe at some point I say, you know what, I'm making 100 grand a year here. Everybody else making 50 or 60, but I'm selling a little bit. I mean, I'm working a little bit harder. And I make 100. You know what? I'm satisfied. And would never go out on their own. And then there are other people that say, as soon as I learn all of this, I'm going to go out on my own.
Yeah, but I think
I think that mindset hurts people too, though, because there's that mindset, and I know people with that mindset. As soon as I get this 2 years under my belt and I learn everything I need to know, I'm going off on my own. Well, newsflash, 17 years in the business, I still don't know everything I need to know because it's always changing and you're always learning. And I think Saul would probably agree with me on that too. I mean, how many years have you been in this business? And do you ever feel like you're not learning something?
No, I've been licensed since 1975.
Woo, Saul.
That is 48 years or something, right? And I learn something every day. You know why? Because things change every day.
They change every day.
But
so
guys,
the people with that mindset of like, hey, I'm going to just learn this in 2 years and I'm going to be out of here.
That's true.
Those are the ones that are back in the professional standards and the ones that are getting dinged with the state of Illinois for not doing what they need to do or violating license law.
But I think
because they just have the mindset of like, I'm out. I don't need to know anymore. I already know everything.
But I think what we're missing here is the value of a real estate agent is the consultation piece. And the more knowledge, like we have an overall knowledge of real estate, of the market in general, because this is theoretically what we do every day, right? The value of a great real estate agent is this piece. You lose that when you're an employee. I would think that you would lose that.
I agree.
I'm not sure you'd lose it if the broker of the firm said, this is what we need to do.
That's not, I mean, if you go to corporate America,
and they held those people to a standard, right?
Yeah. But if you go to corporate America, the employees like don't always know what the boss, like what their values are, what their goals are, they don't know what they know.
And given how hard it is to terminate people.
Hello.
Been there, done that.
Yes, I think realtors don't know enough. We think they do.
I agree.
We give them credit for being the expert in the neighborhood, but really they don't have the tools to be
agree, but being an employee is not going to solve that because you still have the same problem. They're not listening.
Solve that.
Huh?
They're not, they're there, they're getting the information, but they may or may not be listening to it. And that also depends on how well versed and how knowledgeable is your managing broker if you're in an employee scenario. I would argue that there's a ton of managing brokers that I know that I'm like, I can't believe that this is what you're telling your agents.
So it's harder to get rid. If somebody's an employee, right, then to move them away from that's more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
As opposed to if they're an independent contractor and they get tired of you or you get tired of them.
Right. You sign off on the license and have a nice day.
Right. I just think that having an employee model, I think it's good if you just want to do transactional real estate. If you're like an investor, you have knowledge, you know what you're doing, you buy, a lot of houses every year and you sell a lot of houses every year, that makes sense because you have a system, there's a process, we do these 10 things and like, that's what we do and whatever. Right. But
and to your point, that might be a nice in between. I mean, if the world were up to me, when you get into this business and you decide, hey, I'm going to get into real estate. All right, which avenue do you want to go? There's A, B, C, and D, and where these fit. And if you just want to do transactions, you don't want to have to worry about generating any leads. You are comfortable with a cap of X for your annual salary. You want to have someone help you, tell you what to do, have a dialed in boss. Then maybe this is the direction you go.
I don't think we can assume though.
I always want to learn. I always want to do I want to continue to learn. I want to get involved in committees. I want to take it further, make a career out of this. Then maybe you're going in a different direction.
True.
And then maybe you're the independent contractor version. And then you have other versions that are employee based.
Well, in other states they've done is pass laws that just makes everybody a broker.
Right.
right? So, and actually in my mind, if somebody wants to go out and invest and buy real estate and deal with, I'm not sure how many people like that I want to have working for me, because if they make a mistake or if they take advantage of a consumer, I'm going to get in trouble if I'm their broker. And so what I recommend, and I hear this all the time, should I get my broker's license? I think everybody should get their broker's license.
Well, why should everybody just not have the highest level of education when it comes to
Exactly.
that? I mean, I would argue that in where I'm at, the only difference between the broker and the managing broker license is how to handle earnest money and how to semi-manage having an office, which if you're not going to do that, then those things are a moot point.
Right.
Even as an independent broker, I don't hold earnest money. So that whole section is useless to me. There is no difference.
But would it be solved? I just don't think that we're like, I think it's not necessarily solving the problem. What if like, I think, what if there's
problems, Jen?
I know, so many problems. But what if there's like different, and we've talked about this before, like kind of different levels of licensing, right? Depending on what you want to do, along with this
That's kind of what I'm getting
idea,
at, right?
yeah, along with this idea of like different business models, some employees, some not. Like, does it have to be all or nothing? Like, does everybody either have to be an employee or have to be an independent contractor?
Right. I mean, if you're a flipper and you're just looking for somebody to help you with a transaction and get through the process and do it that way, then maybe this is the option you go with.
Well,
If
then
you're
your
somebody who's
company
looking for
is
the true expert.
licensed, maybe like your
Right.
investment company is licensed so that you have
Sure.
access to all the things, but you don't really need the help, right? Like you're
But an
doing it all.
investment company can't be licensed unless the broker of record is licensed, right? So I can't make, at least in California, I can't make
Right.
my corporation a broker, a real estate broker,
Right.
unless
The
I've got
principal has
somebody
to
that
be.
works for me that has a real estate broker's license. They become the
Yeah.
broker of record for the corporation. Then we can do
Right.
it. But I, as a salesperson, I can't do that.
Right.
Right. I'm talking about from the consumer standpoint. So if I'm somebody who says I want to get involved in flipping, I just want somebody to go out there and find me something and help me through the transaction, then maybe I'm going with this route. Like anything else, you could go buy a shirt or a pair of pants at TJ Maxx, or you can go buy a shirt or a pair of pants at Nordstrom. The experience is going to be different. So do we have the TJ Maxx, / Target version? And then if you want somebody who's really going to, has a higher level of education, higher level of experience, and all of those things, you want the Nordstrom experience, then you need to seek out somebody from one of these
Yeah.
brokerages
So let's
or
talk a little
independent
bit
people.
about the compensation structure itself.
Yeah.
Right? So along with the method of employment comes this compensation structure and how that compensation structure might work. And we talk a little bit about this, how difficult it might be to keep somebody or to let somebody go based on compensation and how you compensate them. So commissions are shrinking. Commissions are going to continue to shrink. There's huge compression and forces that people don't even see, that within 5 years, they won't even recognize what is happening. And so as that happens, consumers want to pay less. They pay way too much in transactions. It's way too ineffective. The method of compensation, which is contingency compensation, you work your butt off, but you don't get paid unless something closes.
Right.
And that costs the consumer. That's an inefficient way to charge. And so one way to correct that is the employee model, right? So you see some of these employee models, they actually charge less. They actually will say, we'll list it for 1%, right? Because they only pay their employees so much, and that brings the price down, and they're in many cases, they're traded right there on the stock exchange so they can afford, they got, endless almost sums of capital to keep them in business until they start making a profit. And so they can experiment with what appears to be a more efficient way to handle a transaction from a monetary perspective.
Maybe from a monetary perspective, but I just don't think it captures the value that real estates offer as a consultant. But that being said, if we move more to that model, like an employee model, but then like Rachel said, we have more people like her that they are brokers and they own their brokerage, I can see the compensation model moving towards consultant fees, either by the project, flat, whatever you agree to. You can agree to whatever you want, But I can see it more saying like, okay, here's the project. Here's how long we think it's going to last. Here's what I'm willing to do for you. And then either here's the charge per hour or here's the charge like flat. Do you want me to do the project for you, basically?
Yeah, that works. I used to do that, right? Where I actually used to do real estate seminars sponsored by some group called the Learning Annex, which had magazines on every rack, and you could take a class on anything you wanted. Use your imagination. Anything you wanted, including real estate, buying your first home. And so I don't know how I got involved with it, but I did this for about 5 years. I did it one a month seminar, how to buy your first home, how to buy an investment property, and understanding financial planning. So every month I did these things, and then that's where I get leads.
Right.
So people would come to this seminar to learn about how to buy your first home. What I would teach them is how to buy your first home from me. Right. I would go through all the things, and I talk about, an agency, and if they don't tell you who they represent, then here's the things you should be looking for when you talk to somebody else. And,
because when they have a conversation with the next person, they're not getting any of that information.
Exactly.
They're getting none of it.
Yeah, but none of it, they're not going to necessarily get it like in an employee model either. I mean, if you look at the downside of big corporations and like why people leave corporations, a lot of times it's because they're inefficient. And you guys are saying, well, not Saul, you said it could increase efficiency potentially, I guess, of the transaction, but I don't know that it will.
Well, I think it will over the long run.
This is where we fight.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Drop the mitts, you two.
The way it works, how can we expect them getting better? We can't tell them to go to school.
Right.
We can't tell them what time to come in.
Yeah, but we
Why
can.
do we do this?
But we can.
Why are we in this business?
I know, right? But we can. That's the thing. Like, I think it needs to change, right? And the only way I don't know, we got to blow it up, man.
In a subtle way, it can change. But I mean, we still don't make that public, right? We don't talk about this. And so I'm back to this idea. I like the employee model. I can see the independent contractor model work. That's how I sold real estate, and I managed a real estate company, and that's how I hired people. I hired them as independent contractors.
I hate the employee model. Rachel, you're the tiebreaker.
I don't like either one of them.
Oh, damn it, Rachel.
I know. Well, there's good and bad about both. From a managing broker standpoint or former managing broker standpoint, of offices from 10 people to 220 people, it's a really crappy spot to be in when you have an agent or multiple agents that routinely are going rogue and doing things they shouldn't be doing, yet you have absolutely no way of modifying, changing, making them responsible for the behavior or anything. You're just
you can send their license back, can you not?
You can let them go.
If it's completely up to you. If you're the managing broker of a brokerage who has owners, is a franchise and there's an owner, or you're hired by the owner of the company to act as the managing broker, oftentimes you're not the one making those decisions. You can give your recommendation, but your recommendation often is just like, I don't.
Yeah, because they're incentivized to keep people even if they suck. Just like agents that are coming that are long-time agents that do a lot of deals are like, whatever, I'll pay the fine. It's the same thing.
Pay the fine and keep going. Absolutely.
Same thing. Because if an average agent does like 5 deals and they get in trouble once every, 3 years, you still got 14 other deals out of them.
Right.
That aren't a problem.
Absolutely.
Well, because everybody's got a cousin. And that's what the broker's counting on.
Exactly.
Right.
Cousin, everybody's got a uncle, and all I need is just sell one of them. I'm ahead because it didn't cost me anything to keep you here.
Right.
So I'll keep
and I look at it, even as an independent managing broker who can and has the ability to bring on other agents, I absolutely 100% don't want the headache of having a brokerage of 5, 10, 15 people, even 2 people, if the person I've got to deal with or the agents I've got to deal with are going to cause me nothing but a headache every single day.
Right. But I just don't think an employee,
anybody on, it's going to be somebody who's really, really the right fit.
But I don't think an employee model solves that, because as an employee model, now you have the problems of a corporation. And in a corporation, they don't fire people. They aren't efficient. Like, all of these things are not true for most. Like, that's,
I guess if I looked at it from my point of view as an independent person, if I want to bring on one other agent, okay, just say one, maybe 2, And I'm looking at it from the perspective of, I'm going to stay as a managing broker in an independent contractor relationship, or I'm going to bring them on as an employee. Nothing from my standpoint is going to change, other than the fact that if I want to terminate somebody, I'm either signing off on a license and saying, have a nice day, or I'm going through 3 to 6 months of documenting all this
Right.
stuff so that
What
I
a
can
pain in
terminate
the
them,
ass.
and then having to pay unemployment when they suck.
That's right.
There's no good answer.
Unemployment aspect of it, right?
Right.
Right.
So we've never been able to collect unemployment except for COVID, right?
Right.
And we were able to
Right.
collect unemployment
Right.
because of NAR. And but now I think we're past that and we're back to the way we were. Now think about this. If you're an employee, then you're not going to be able to go out and make the kinds of deals you'd like to be able to make because you're an employee. Right. So I go back to that thing where I was doing these seminars. Because I was doing these seminars, I had more leads than I knew what to do with. And they were real leads.
Right. Absolutely.
To listen to buying a house.
They're walking in already warm.
Yeah, they were warm. And so I could experiment on ways of compensation. And I did the hourly thing. And I think I had 3 people chose the hourly thing. Of hundreds and hundreds of people, right? 3 of them chose, even though I could show them, you'll save $6,000 if you do it, right? But if you don't buy anything, you still have to pay me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that was, and the other one was, hey, you don't have to pay me a thing right now, but when I sell you something, I'm going to make commission, and that's how I'm going to get paid. But you don't have to put any money up right now. Most of the people back then opted for that. Right. Because they didn't want to have to take money out of their pocket, even though it's like you could show them how much money they would save if they did it that way. Didn't matter to them because the money out of their pocket.
Well, that's the whole philosophy.
If they have the option of you opening a door and for them to be a tire kicker for 2 years, then you're saying, sure, that's an option. I'll take that.
Well,
I like that. I like that payment option, even though it's completely out of the realm of normal around here, because then you're weeding out the people who really aren't motivated.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, if you want to buy a house, then that's fine. Then put up a retainer, and then it will put it towards we'll take it off your commission later. Right. I mean, in our buyer's agreements now, they updated them maybe 2 years ago, and added in a paragraph for a retainer. So now, as a buyer's agent, you can charge a retainer,
and you should.
That gets put toward and that gets deducted off of your incoming commission later.
Yeah.
But I guess so do you guys, I guess we're all kind of saying we sort of operate both as an employee and as an independent contractor, not fully either.
Right.
Is that what we all think?
Yeah. We get treated one way.
Yeah.
Right.
But we're designated another.
And taxed another.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's how it works.
And I don't think a complete move to one or the other, or going from a complete move from independent contractor to an employee relationship situation is going to change everything.
No, it won't.
Even going half and half isn't going to change anything, because you still, at the end of the day, have people who aren't invested in the career that they've chosen, and aren't bothering to better themselves every day and actually learn about what they're doing. I think a big part of the problem comes from the fact that when these big brokerages do nothing but go after people and go, well, we're going to teach you how to get leads. We're going to teach you how to do this. We're going to teach you how to do all of these things and run your CRM. They're not teaching them how to actually get through a real estate transaction.
No.
They're teaching them everything but that. So they're really not teaching them what they need to know in order to really adequately serve their client. They're teaching them everything else.
And they can't hold them accountable to learn it either.
No, they can't.
Kind of an in-between, I think, is you have a broker's license, you have a sales license, but you say you create some rule that says brokers, you can only hire people as independent contractors or as employees, right? So that means the people that want to work on their own, they work on their own. If a broker wants to hire somebody, they have to hire them as an employee, which is an expense. So they're going to be more careful about hiring people. Now, you can be more lax. You could say, if you're a broker, you can have 2 people that you don't have to make employees. But once you get over 2 people, then you have to change your structure and be.
And I think that's not so bad either, because if I look at it and go, okay, if I were to bring on an employee as an independent agent or independent managing broker, that can be cost prohibitive for a single person. So to have an option to bring in maybe 2 to 3 people before you have to move to that status of employee isn't a bad option either.
Kind of like having a duplex, a triplex, or a quad, and that's residential, and everything 5 and above is commercial.
Right. Yeah, give people the option to be able to get the ball rolling and get enough steam to build their business enough to be able to take on that expense of being an employer and employee
Yeah.
without,
Or we
without putting
can
them over the
create
edge.
like a third one. So we have like the independent contractor, we have an employee, and then we have the GOK. Have you heard of
Hybrid.
this? Huh? The
The
yeah.
what? The
Hybrid.
GOK.
Yeah, God only knows.
Oh, yep.
But yeah, some type of hybrid, because it's like, but I just want to know, like, I think the DOJ, like when they ask this question, I think they're thinking the problem is one thing. And I think the people that the way the system was created were trying to solve a different problem. And I don't think they're the same problem. So I think if we could agree on what are we trying to solve here, that will, it seems like then we could figure out the solution.
Maybe. See, the DOJ is after a couple things. So they're typically not only after one thing. They're
Yeah.
after a couple things, right? So one is transparency and buyer commissions. We know that, right? That's one of the things they're after. But another thing they're after is the fact that in the last 25 years, we've gotten amazing amounts of technologies that should reduce the efforts that take place in a real estate transaction, yet the commissions haven't changed.
Right.
So that's a big deal to the DOJ, right? Is they actually look at this, they say, look, we've gone in, look, it's the same commission, but look at the job, it's changed. They got all this technology, so then they think, wow, it must be price fixing.
Right.
It must be price fixing. And then so that's what we're looking at. We're seeing that piece where DOJ is saying commissions they need to be more competitive.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Then there's other things about transparency. So they're looking at a number of things. So one way to cure the transparency thing was to post both of the buyer agent commission. Why did they do that? Transparency.
Right.
I knew the DOJ was after the transparency piece.
Now, and they're just like solving little things when really the whole system has changed so much since it's created. Maybe it's time to take a look at the overall piece and say, okay, I don't know. It's changed so much, yet we still operate how we operated 50 years ago.
Yeah. And the technology's changed. And
everything's changed.
I remember I used to show on a horse, I'd ride around.
On your dinosaur?
Yeah, that was tough.
I bet it was. Well, hopefully they'll ask us our opinion when.
Well, one more thing here is again, and this idea of the DOJ and the antitrust is not new. This is just 2 of the 3 volumes.
From the 70s.
Yeah, but I mean, they even printed them since. This is case after case after case. People think, well, there's only a few antitrust cases. There's tons of them. And every time I read one, I learn something.
Yeah.
Right. So go back to the main premise. What should it be? Should it be independent contractors? Should people be employees? Well, I think we've got an experimental marketplace going on right now.
Yeah, I think you're right.
We've got both of them, and we should just keep our eye on them. But
well, nothing's going to be perfect, right? Like everything has pros, everything has cons. That's it. Like nothing's going to be perfect. But I think that we can all agree that something needs to be updated. Like the whole process, needs to be updated. We need to look at kind of everything, even how loans are done.
And I think we're seeing a lot of stuff happen just because of the market shifting and the discussion around commissions, all that kind of stuff. I mean, our board has updated our buyer agency agreements to include several new subcategories that we now have to talk through with the clients because it requires initials on those. But I mean, these are explaining commissions and do you want to pay out? What do you want to pay out?
Mm-hmm.
This is what people are paying out. I'll pull up my MLS and go through the listings and say, here's in your neighborhood, here's the cooperative compensation that's paid. What do you want to pay?
Right.
Well, right now, I mean, my house can sell itself. So why am I paying that? I'm going to pay this. So right now I have several listings that are coming up and those sellers are opting to pay a little bit less.
Houses cannot sell themselves.
And I don't necessarily disagree with them. I disagree with the house can sell themselves thing because yes, we do a whole lot more than that. But on the other hand, I do agree that with the commission compression that's happening, this is a result of that. We even have a section in our listing agreement now that says, do you want to allow non-members to view and sell your home? So non-MLS members, people that are if you pull them up with the MLS, they're not there. They are licensed with the state, but they are non-members of anything.
Oh, I thought they weren't even licensed. I was like, oh my God.
No, they're licensed. Right. No, they're licensed. they're not in the MLS, means there's no offer of compensation. So now we're having these long conversations. My listing appointments now have gotten 15 to 20 minutes longer because I now have to explain, what does that mean? It means we're licensed, we're members of the MLS. The MLS is what offers compensation. If someone chooses not to be a member of that, they're not being compensated. So this whole conversation about compensation that we just had, pretend that didn't happen. And if
Mhm.
somebody who's not a member wants to list or wants to show and sell your home, what do you want to pay them?
Right.
So now these conversations have gotten a lot longer and a lot more
It's so
complicated.
much. It's too much.
It's a lot. And I'll guarantee you that the conversations that agents are having with their sellers are probably not the most accurate.
No.
Well, and you reach your,
Because I would argue that some of these agents don't even know what that means.
Right.
well, an important point is that the degree of difficulty to sell a home often directly relates to what's going on in the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and in this
absolutely.
economy, for the last couple of years, and you think about this, agents haven't had to show properties the way they did when I first started selling real estate.
100%.
Right? It's different. Well, that was a big piece. I had to take people out and show them property, took gasoline, took time, took all these things, and that
Right.
more, I think, justified the commission. But this is a DOJ thing. Look, it took that whole piece out just about. But the commissions haven't changed.
Right.
Not changed much. And that's why they're after the real estate business.
Absolutely. Because if one thing is going to change so drastically, the other piece should be changing too.
Yep.
And it's not.
And if it doesn't, then they think price fixing and conspiracy.
Right.
Right. Exactly. And that's
Which is
exactly
also
why
not
we're in
true.
this position that we're in.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
All right. Well,
but the perception is that's what it is.
yeah, we can have like a major week-long mastermind about this. But
Right, we
Rachel,
could, right?
yeah, right. If anybody has a referral for you in Chicago or they have a question for you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way to reach me is via email at rreal@dealwithreal.com or by phone at 630-542-8688.
Awesome. And Saul, if they want some more information on you guys have the data advocate up. Can you tell us more about that and then how to get a hold of you?
So the data advocate, thedataadvocate.com. So we think that people don't know enough about data. People don't know enough about blockchain. People don't know enough about cryptocurrency. People don't know enough about major land reform that's coming their way. People don't know about the money that's coming down from the federal government. People don't know about the changes in transportation. And so if I'm a real estate guy, I want to know about where's the transportation changing, where's the light rail going. That's the kind of consultative thing that a good agent will know about. And so at the Data Advocate, we kind of say, most agents don't know this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to start, Rachel, you'll love it. It's like teaching, right?
Right.
So
bring it on.
The dataadvocate.com. That's what our mission is to teach people about these things that we think will be more important to them moving into the future and selling real estate and serving their customers. And you can email me at saul@bettercallsaul.realtor.
Awesome. Thanks for being on, guys. It was fun.
Good to see
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.